Hello from the patio. You might hear a little background noise right now. That is noise that is occurring in the new Makers Lab. We're here on the patio, which for the first 25 years of the school's existence, this is where it all happened. This is there was nothing else at St. Augustine High School except this patio. Now those were much simpler days way back when. And I'm sure the curriculum was probably the same curriculum for every student, no matter whether they were a high-performing student or a lower-performing student. Our school really kind of started taking off after World War II with the added population, with guys coming home from the war and having been shipped out of San Diego, decided to make this their home. When I took science way back in the 1960s, there was 3 options. Sophomore year, you took biology. Junior year, chemistry. Senior year, physics. And today, that's much different. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I have with us today our assistant principal for academics, the real architect of our academic program, Mr. Greg Hecht. Mr. Hecht has been here for a number of years now, but I'm going to let Mr. Hecht introduce himself and kind of give us the lay of the land about how he got here and actually where he came from. So Greg, why don't you introduce yourself to the community?
Yeah, I appreciate that. President Hearn, thank you so much for having me out here today, and it's a real pleasure to be able to be here with you today. We'll talk obviously about the science curriculum and maybe a few other things, but to answer your question straight away, I've been in Catholic education at the high school level for 23 years, and I spent some time in government as well, in city government, municipal government, but really started actually in the Diocese of San Diego back in 1993. I started at Marian Catholic, way before it became the modern day that most people know today. So I started there, worked in campus ministry, ASB, and kind of like, you know, executives that start in the mailroom and work their way up, I have probably been in every facet of Catholic high school education you can imagine. And as a Catholic administrator yourself, I'm sure you know that you wear all kinds of hats, and when you're told to do 6 or 7 different things, you just do them. And that was kind of how I started in Catholic education, and then had an opportunity to move to Santa Barbara and be a vice principal and coach, ASB, ministry, all of that at Bishop Diego High School, well actually Bishop Garcia Diego High School in Santa Barbara. And then following a number of years there, had an opportunity, which has kind of always been a dream of mine, to work in government at some level, and served as a department head at the city of Spokane, Washington. I served as the head of neighborhood services, code enforcement, worked directly with the mayor, served 4 different mayors. So I had a number of years in government at the municipal level. Fascinating time, great opportunity, and but at that point, after quite a run in that field, you kind of see things sometimes on the results end. And so I realized, while it was an amazing time and great opportunity, that getting back into high school education, Catholic high school education, is kind of where, that's my calling, my vocation. And so as good fortune would have it, almost 14 years ago now, been here almost 14 years, picked up the phone, and thank goodness Mr. Hearn answered. And there was an opportunity here, and Mr. Hearn in his infinite wisdom said, make the most of it. And so 14 years have gone on, and I find myself here at Saints and loving every minute of it. There's no place I'd rather be. It's fantastic.
Well, Greg, you probably don't know this, but your very first faculty meeting, on your very first day that year, I met you just over here in this hallway. And after a very brief discussion with our principal, I told him, because I think you started out as just a semester with the hope of maybe a second semester, and I said, Mr. Hearn, let's find a way to keep him, if at all possible. And so I am so happy that you kind of made your move into administration here, because you've really set a really high bar for us and for our students. Now, at the outset, I mentioned that the curriculum way back in the day was a much simpler task.
Absolutely.
What is going on in science curriculum right now that is really impacting how we go about our business?
Sure. Well, I think everyone's probably very familiar with the word STEM and STEAM and these acronyms that have really been around for a while, but they really kind of came to the fore in the last 20 years, in high school education in particular. And I think a lot of that has to do with the trends both in industry and as well as our global economy, our global community. And really, high school education, my philosophy has always been, you have to look forward. You have to look 20, 30 years down the road. We don't want to be educating students for an era gone by. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, right? So you start to look at some of the things that the world is going to be challenged with moving forward. You start to look at resource allocations. You start to look at economies that are so highly integrated that, you know, someone sneezes over in Europe and we all get sick. So these types of mentality, this thinking, is kind of where science has kind of been moving towards. And most of the challenges that we face are going to be in those fields. So you start to look at engineering, civil, mechanical, these types of areas are going to be critical to the success of not only our country but the world as a whole. And so I think everybody recognizing that from the post-secondary level all the way down to kindergarten. I think that re-emphasis on science, technology, innovation, creativity. I think those things are kind of what has been driving it, particularly the last 20 years. Everyone may recall the space race, right? When that kind of prompted the last great kind of infusion and focus on mathematics and science. And then we kind of drifted away from that for a while, and things shifted. The global world shifted. Our whole world kind of changed in the 80s and 90s. And I think there's kind of a refocus on that now, and rightly so. What I think is important, and you've touched on it already, is the complexity. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that while I'm very excited about our new science curriculum, the things that we've done over the last 5 to 10 years here, being at Saints and being at Catholic Augustinian School allows us to ask the most important question, and that is why. I think science alone is not going to lead us necessarily to the solutions. You have to couple that with a solid liberal arts foundation, and that's what we're known for historically. And I think you merge those two, you marry those two, the science and the question of why that you often find in the liberal arts, the literature, those types of things, allowing us to say, well, that's interesting, science is the vehicle, but why are you doing it? Why are you learning engineering? Why are you learning physics? Well, because we want to tackle these problems. And for me, that leads to creativity and innovation. And we've never done anything great, mankind, without first imagination and creativity. And to me, that's sparked when you have a sense of wonder. And how is that fostered? In great literature, in critical thinking. So if you marry the science and those principles of wonder and critical thinking, sky's the limit, and that's something that I know that we do here as well or better than anyone else. And that's why I'm so proud to lead this charge in terms of that science.
So, Mr. Hecht, I do a lot of research at the conclusion of every year, just statistically, how are students doing, how is the process this year, but one of the processes that we undertake every year is the number of kids going off to college and the number of them entering technical fields such as engineering, the sciences, mathematics, those fields. And I'm wondering, since it's more and more every year, how that preparation has gone and the feedback that you've received from these young men in their chosen fields.
Excellent question, and I appreciate the question. It's really kind of the foundation of what we do here. I think what we do really well in preparing those young men to go on to those programs. Year in, year out, and I really have to credit the counseling department as well as our alumni. It's a very active alumni base, and especially the recent alums. And at least in my tenure here, to your point about data and following up and so on and so forth, consistently year over year, what we hear is, especially the ones that have just gone into these programs, Mr. Hecht, I know, man, my junior and senior year in math and science, it was really challenging. You guys really pushed us. When I got to college, my first year was easy. I went through, it was great. And so while we don't want to break the backs of our kids while they're here, it is our job to prepare them for those programs. And I think we've done an outstanding job. our math and science departments, I think, have done incredible work. If you look at not only our AP results over the last 10 years and where they've gone, where they've trended, but I think that it speaks to the caliber of student. I think it speaks to our teachers and faculty who work tirelessly to make sure that they're prepared. I think it speaks to our counseling department that does such a great job with their articulation with colleges and universities across the country, across the world. And I think that kind of feedback has helped drive some of the decisions that we're making now, to your point. And you're starting to see that in terms of the direction we're going with engineering and robotics and some of these things. I also think it's important that while everyone is talking STEM and STEAM and all these things, I come back to that point about making sure that when we launch these programs, we're doing so in a way that allows our students to be successful. We don't just want to throw things out there to say, oh, we've got this, we've got that, and then when you delve a little deeper, you realize there's not a whole lot of substance there. It's my philosophy that you never do anything without it being substantive, without it being thought through, and without it being in the best interest of our students and families. Clearly with the all-boys school here, and clearly with what they are desiring and where they're going, it's really important for us to have studied our science curriculum, really refine it, hone it, and then we continue to add where appropriate and where it serves our students best in terms of their postgraduate desires. And that's kind of where we've moved recently.
It's come to my attention that the University of California is proposing four years of science for graduates. And how has that been addressed by the school?
Very, very interesting question. I think that's a lot of things that sometimes the parents aren't necessarily tuned into because they're in the here and now where they should be. But I think it's our job to look again back to the future and saying, well, we're starting to see that trend kind of take hold nationwide, not just necessarily here in California, although that's a big part of the conversation now for us here in California. But you're looking at schools even like Georgia Tech, Michigan, University of Texas, these schools that are starting to institute four-year requirements where a lot of our boys will apply to, in addition to the UC schools, kind of put us in a situation where we said, you know, we better prepare now for what we believe to be inevitable with the University of California, that, you know, right now it's 2 years are required, 3 strongly recommended. The Academic Senate, I think, of the University of California, I think eventually will move in that direction. And so that's part of what we're doing now, is preparing our students so we're not caught behind the 8 ball. So we know we can fulfill that four-year requirement of science, which we believe is to be inevitable. And we don't wait to the last minute to do it. But also we want to do it right, and we want to do it thoughtfully. And I think that's what we're undertaking now. But I think you're going to continue to see that trend. And even if a student maybe doesn't have a penchant or aptitude towards science, or science creates anxiety for them, we've created roadmaps here at St. Augustine High School for the spectrum of student, for the whole spectrum of student in terms of their approach to getting to college if those science requirements are indeed, they come to pass.
Yeah, I was just thinking all this science and mathematics, and I was thinking about that parent that's a little skittish about their son in
Sure.
such a high-powered program. How does a strong liberal arts student, maybe performing arts, fine arts, how are they? What kind of curriculum will we have for them in science that is approved, that gets them into the
Sure.
University of California? What would be their roadmap?
Yeah, it's great. Another great question. I think it's really important to kind of go back to where you talked about that creative student, the one who might be more inclined to be the right brain, the artist, in tune with literature, communications, those types of things. I'm really excited for those students for a whole number of reasons, but most of which have to do with the innovation and creativity and their mindset they bring to science class. And I think that kind of is what we talked about at the outset here. So love to have those students in science classes. But if they're not so inclined in the higher mathematics or things of that nature, that's more of a struggle for them. We've worked really hard, I think, over the last 5 to 7 years to make sure that our entire science curriculum is open to the broadest spectrum of student, to invite them to enjoy science, to reimagine science in a way that they might not have in their previous schooling, which is it should be fun, it should be creative, it should be innovative, it should foster questions, and I think that mantra really fits those types of students. Specifically with curriculum, we have a broad range, and I encourage people to go ahead and look at our UC course list with respect to science. The work that we've put in getting some of those classes approved, not just the AP Physics or the AP Chemistries or the Engineering and Robotics, but the physical sciences, the environmental sciences, which are now, those are all approved by the University of California as lab sciences. So if a student doesn't have that necessarily penchant for physics or chemistry, they can still get 3 years, 3 solid years of science here that will prepare them for admission to the universities, even if they're not inclined to be scientists, if you will. Yeah.
And I was just looking at social media today, and the announcement is that we are in partnership with the University of Texas.
Correct.
How did that come about, and what is the value to St. Augustine High School?
It's tremendous. It's a very exciting opportunity for us here at St. Augustine High School. Tremendous opportunity for our parents and students and prospective students. We have now entered into a partnership with the University of Texas at Austin, the Cockrell School of Engineering. And as part of our new Makers Lab, the thinking was that we wanted to make sure that we had a first-rate curriculum, engineering curriculum, robotics curriculum, to go along with our first-rate makerspace that's coming online this fall. And we actually have a former engineer, Mr. Freestone, who's actually going to be teaching it. So that three-legged stool of curriculum, space, and instruction came together beautifully. We're very, very excited about it. So in application, the University of Texas Austin, their engineering department, we will have faculty mentors from the Cockrell School of Engineering working directly with our students, with Mr. Freestone, in the engineering program here. It allows us access to that college level curriculum that they would be getting as a first or second year student at the University of Texas Austin in engineering. So that's wonderful. We'll have access not only to their curriculum, to their instructors as mentors for our students, but also opportunities for dual enrollment. So if a student takes our engineering course here, they'll be working with Mr. Freestone, with the University of Texas Austin, and then for a fee moving forward, they'll have the opportunity for a dual enrollment where they get college credit in an engineering course that they can then use and take with them in their post-secondary applications.
Well, it certainly sounds like there's a ton of opportunity for Saintsmen, not just this year, but in the coming years. And I know that you're very excited about the new wet lab that is being built in addition to the Makers Lab, that conversion, which allows for 4 years of science when we get there.
Correct.
Well, I thank you for being with us today, Greg. I know there's some time for some R&R for you, and you're going to be off to your vacation soon.
Looking forward to it.
I just want to thank you on behalf of the entire community for the great work that you do.
Yeah.
And for the great coach of volleyball that you are.
Thank you for mentioning it.
To everyone out there that is viewing this today,
great.
I hope that your summer's been great. And until next time that we do a broadcast from the patio, stay safe and God bless.